Where is she?
Hi. I'm so
Hi.
sorry, guys.
Hey, you're late.
Hey.
I'm late for a very important date. Ben, I was being held up in a ICP meeting and they with board members, and they wouldn't let me go, and I told them I was going for, hosting you at an event, and they still wouldn't let me go. But they did say hello to you, so there's that.
Thank you.
Well, we were almost going to start without you, but you do such a good job starting. So
glad you didn't. And of course, that means I actually have to find what it is that I say every week. I'm
somewhere
seconds away from that.
That's fine. I told people to put their phone or their emails in the chat so that we could add them to our mailing list.
Oh, Marissa, one of my former students. Yay! It's so good to see you, Marissa. All right. Yes. Now let me deboard and up my FotoFika game. Hello and welcome. So excited to have you all here. I think you've probably already been told that we are recording this event, but in case that hasn't been said, we are recording this event. I am Anne Musoni. I'm Dean of the School of the International Center of Photography. Welcome. I want to start by thanking the Society for Photographic Education, who we remain affiliated with and who has been generous enough to let us use their Zoom account. SPE is a member-based organization, for those of you who aren't familiar, and we'll be dropping their website in the chat window momentarily. A few protocol reminders. If you are not already on our email mailing list, please do drop me a personal chat so that I can add you to the list. And if you want to also give me your affiliation, that's fine, but I just need your email address. We do use our email to announce our events every other week, but we also do post everything on social media. So if you don't want to share that with me, that's fine too. We ask that you all stay on mute during our presentation as per Zoom usual. And when we get to questions and answers, there'll be an opportunity to interact directly with Ben. Please do stick around because that informal conversation is one that I think has proven to be quite fruitful over the weeks. What we will ask you to do though is to post your questions in the chat window so that we can in fact collect that in the event that questions, especially today, are asked of Ben that can't be answered in the time that we have. We want to make sure he has them. Okay, we are establishing, I say this every time, we are establishing the way to move forward in this shifting time, and we can certainly do that together. So welcome to FotoFika. Over to you, John.
Hey, everybody. I'm John Fryer. I'm an associate professor of cross-disciplinary media at VCU Arts in Richmond. And I'm going to be very brief because we want to get to Ben. But there's a few things. So I'm also a member of the board of directors at SPE, and I'm going to share my screen because we're doing a great fundraiser right now, and I want to show you a few things that are going on with that, and then also tell you this, give you a little status update on where we are with the cards because those are coming. So let's see if I can share this and see where we are here. Yep. All right, hope you can see that. Yep, people can see my screen, perfect. So this is, if you haven't been here before, the FotoFika website. We maintain the blog, we have teaching resources, we have assignment examples. If it's your first time here, please check that out because a lot of the work that we've done, not just presenting here, but also after the fact goes to this space. Just for SPE, there's a fundraiser right now that's a co-fundraiser, and we have limited editions of, I believe we have 8 different artists, and each of the artists are donating a portion of their of the proceeds from that to a separate organization. So you can see Odette England's photograph is a portion of it's going to National Organization for Women. So it's a beautiful set of prints. They're limited to 30 for each artist. Susan K. Grant has a print here. Hannah Altman is a former grad of VCU Arts and is one of the FotoFika All-Stars as well. So I'm going to put a link to that in the chat if you're interested. It's a great fundraiser for a great organization, or at least that's what I think, because I'm part of it. And a lot of you are as well. So the next thing is that we've just updated this site so that we include people that have been selected as all-stars, as we showed you last week. So now we have an artist, their statement, and then the statement that's been written about their work by a professional in the field. And our friend Tom, who's been helping us on the website, has now added our reviewers. So I believe that's Allison Nordstrom. And the reviewers are separated, so they're going to have their own cards in the deck that we're building. And they're designated by being completely black and white. So I'll put that in the chat too, if you're interested in looking at while we're talking. And I think that's what I got for you. So I'm going to pass it to Betsy, so Betsy can introduce the person that we're mostly here to see, Ben Gest.
There are a few people in the waiting room, John, too.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to move around a little bit. I have a couple things to say first, and one just to follow on what John said is SPE is also tomorrow hosting continued. I wrote it down because I can never remember. So a third part of their series that will discuss diversity in higher education as it exists in the contemporary socio-political landscape. It's a webinar. It's tomorrow at, I believe at 4. Shoot, I had it written down. I will put a link in the chat to it. But when SPE webinar, third part in the series to be held tomorrow. So the next thing I just wanted to say oh yeah, one more thing. I wrote it down and then I'm still confused. Is that we're going to offer a workshop, we're not going to have a speaker, but on January 6th, we want to have a working session for talking about strategies for darkroom classes. And so strategies for hybrid, for distance, remote, in-person, compromised classroom. We've promised this for a while, and I'm at the end of the semester of teaching 3 hybrid darkroom classes, and I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of questions. So if you're interested, January 6th, join us and bring ideas, and we'll pull from the photography professor's website or the Facebook page that has a lot of really interesting ideas and thoughts. So that will be January 6th, the regular FotoFika time. But now on to the subject at hand. We're continuing our discussion about critiques. Terry Barrett, who's here again, really caused me to slow down and think a lot. I was really pretty profoundly affected by his presentation a couple weeks ago. I wrote a blog post on the site, so if you want to read it, if you want to find out what I thought was important, it's there. But today we have a guest who's going to talk a little bit about a concrete strategy or tool to use for critiques. So I'm going to hand it over to him after I read this little bio. Ben Gest, he's an associate chair of the part-time programs at the International Center for Photography, and he's taught at SVA, Barnard, FIT, Princeton, Rutgers, SAIC, and Columbia College in Chicago. His work's in several permanent collections, and I will just hand it over to him as he talks about his really great program.
Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, everybody, and everybody for Anne and John. Thank you for helping me put this together here. Guys, welcome. I'm sharing with you software that we created, me and my co-creator, made with the goal in mind of figuring out ways of really sharing feedback, interacting, taking the conversation outside the classroom, not being limited to the 3-hour box of a class or a 2-hour box of a class, and finding more, I think, efficient and progressive ways of interacting and sharing content and helping others critique their work, make their work better. And the goal is for a teacher, in our case, to have a platform that is fast, that is efficient, that is organized, and allows us to quickly respond to students in a very pinpointed way, And also then for a student or an artist who's looking for some sort of feedback, they also have hopefully an experience that is very kind of direct, simple, easy to use, and efficient more than anything. So the software is called Atget Studio, and I'm going to share my screen here right from the beginning here and get right into it. And feel free, I guess the way we do it is we ask questions at the end, but feel free if you want to. I could probably just answer whatever comes up as it goes. But I'm going to log in as a student. I'm going to start as a student account, and you're going to get a sense of what this software looks like through the student. And then I'm going to log in as a teacher would be. So a student, basically what this software looks like is there are two main parts to it. There's a spot called critiques, and critiques is where you can share individual images. And here are images that were shared with a teacher, let's say. And you share them with the teacher, and you can get individual feedback quickly about specific individual pictures. That's one part of it. I'm going to show you this in a second. And then the second part of it is called Studio Walls. Studio Walls is where we kind of replicate the experience of what happens literally in class, where you're having critiques. You have a wall, you're sharing it with the class, the teacher sees it, there's interaction with the studio wall, and there's a conversation that's to be had, usually as a group. It doesn't have to be a group, it could just be one-on-one, or it could be between a teacher and a student, but it could also be between a student and the rest of their classmates. But generally, this is something that gets accessed for the whole class to watch and participate in during class time. So here's my critiques, okay? So this is, again, the two spots. There's my studio walls and then my critiques. This is full because I have a lot of classes now. So if I were a student, I would have all these different classes potentially that I'm enrolled in. These are my classes for my account here that I have. And I'm gonna go into this particular class called Atget Demo Class. And in this space, I can see that I have, under my completed tab, a critique that has come back to me that I've given to my teacher. I'm gonna show you how I did that, but quickly, this is what it looks like. So I have sent a critique to my teacher to look at 3 individual images here. And now I've gotten a response back, a critique summary back from my teacher, and I have gotten picture back with annotations. So you can see these numbered annotations here. They correlate with these boxes here that show me where the comments are addressing, and I can arrow through and see other pictures within the critique. And so each individual image has individual targeted annotations and feedback, in addition to a critique summary that's been as addressing the entire upload. As a student, I would read this, I would look at this, I would interact with it, and I could even follow up with a question to my teacher if I wanted to, and say, to say something, and I could send that question off to my teacher. So that's the general workflow of a critique, but let me show you how I create that as a student. So as a student, I go into my class, I make a critique request, I click onto a source of my pictures. So I'll just grab a few pictures for this critique request, and I'll open them up. They'll upload. Here I can select the class that I'm putting them into. So if I'm registered for a bunch of classes, I would choose the class that I want to go into. If there is an assignment specifically associated with the class, you'd see the assignment here and you'd upload into that specific assignment. You don't have to, but that's where you would do that. And there are things that are asked for, like a title in this request. So you could just call this, you could call it anything. Like student might call it a date. You might call it 12/02. That's fine, whatever you want to title it, obviously. You can also go into your individual pictures and edit and put specific content about the individual pictures for the critiquer to see. And so this is what a student gets to do. They get to communicate specifically with the teacher. They can put a description in with their work. They can request a specific kind of critique, whether it's going to be more technically based or artistically based. And this was created also so we have a clear sense of maybe some of the skill sets or how to cater an actual response. If it's a technical critique, what kind of software do they know or use? So they could fill it in or not fill it in at all. And again, specifically ask a question as they want to in terms of what they want to get from the critique or what they're looking for. And then you request it. And that's done. My critique is in, it's filed, it's cataloged, it's ready to go. I go back to my homepage as a student here, and I see that I have, in this class, I have one critique requested, and this is it, waiting to be requested by the actual critiquer. Now, I can update my request, and I can go in and I can change things about the request. I can refine it and then update the critique request. And And right now I'm awaiting that critique. Okay, so that's the basic gist of the critique section. Then there's the studio walls. So studio walls are walls that I've created for a specific classes. So here's my studio wall page. So as a student, I have different classes and I have different walls for different classes. And at any point in time, these walls will exist in my individual tabs, and I can always share them or choose not to share them with my classmates. So I have my studio walls, and then when the assignments due or it's time to share with the rest of my group, I share that actual wall. So right now this one is not shared, but if I choose to share it, now it is shared. So that means that once it's shared, it's available in this next little tab here called my shared walls. And then for each one of my classes, you can see my walls and the other classmates' walls that we've shared. So basically, I get to look at my classmates' work. They look at my work. My teacher gets to see my work, and they're sectioned off into classes and individual assignments also. So everything is kind of very neatly organized. I can go into specific shared walls for specific assignments that my teachers created, and it just stays very neat and organized that way. And these are walls that can be viewed by the classmates, by my teacher. They can be looked at like as a slideshow. The slideshow has different backgrounds that you can look at it under, and you can thumb through them and move through them. And as somebody who's looking at classmates' work, you can add little comments. So you can put a comment on each picture as a classmate or as a teacher, and they'll be visible to the student and to the rest of the class. You can come back out here, and you can also make comments that are for the entire wall. So it's set up as a way of adding interaction between you and your students and the students with each other. Again, this is I think a nice addition in the sense that some people may use this more than others. It might also be a good thing as a teacher to use for assessment purposes to kind of see who's actually participating and looking and spending time on each other's walls and actually actively participating. So that's the basic gist. You have critiques that are individual images. You have studio walls, and then you have walls that you've shared with your class. And then you can see not just your walls, but your classmates' walls also based on the specific class that you choose. Real quickly too, I won't overdo this, but there are things that students get to do. They get to obviously change their password. They can put their a text number in and get notifications. So you can choose specific notifications you want. So you can be told when, let's say, your teacher is looking at your work, or when a classmate uploads images. You just stay in touch and get either emails or texts based on your own preferences. And you can see the classes that you're registered for and get some more information about them through here. And you get your instructor's email, just very basic things that keep you nice and organized. And I'll go back to my homepage now, and I'm gonna log out. I'm gonna become a teacher. I'm moving hopefully at a clip that's not too fast, but I have a limited time, I know, so I'm gonna try to get to all of this as fast as I can. So I'm gonna log in now as a teacher. So as a teacher, this is what we get to do. So as a teacher, I have critiques that have come in. And I can look at all of my classes at once and see the critiques that have come in, or I can choose specific classes that have things coming in and see the specific critiques that are outstanding and ready to kind of be checked. So in this case right now, there's nothing in that particular class here, but here are a few outstanding critiques that are waiting for me to respond to. And let's take a quick peek at one of them. I haven't looked at it yet, but here's somebody who uploaded some images. She's somebody I talk to regularly. So she wants to know if I have any ideas and just thinking some questions. And I can look at these pictures and I can look at them this way, and then I can choose to critique it and I can start annotating it. So let's take a quick peek now at a shared studio wall. So I'm going to go to a shared studio wall. I'm going to go to one of my classes. Okay, here's another one of my classes. And these are all of the assignments that are shared with the class. So all my different classmates in theory, all my students, I should say, assignments. And I can again isolate it by specific assignments. And as a teacher, let's say my class was looking at this with me and I was running the class and I was looking at one of my students' walls, I could choose to present that wall. And what that means is it's different than presenting a wall, is different than just viewing a wall. So when you view a wall, you literally just kind of have a clean space that you look at the wall. You can put a little projection slideshow in there and thumb through them that way. Again, you can do things like star and you can copy, I'll explain this in a minute, you can copy to your clipboard and you can zoom in and things like that. But as a teacher, you could also do something which kind of really does recreate the experience of being in class and present a wall. When you present a wall, You get to reorganize the wall. You can resize images. You can trash images. You can kind of tidy up your space. And you could create a layout or a different edit. You can zoom in and out. You can move the pan through if you have lots of pictures in there. And you can really see the board in lots of different iterations. And as you do change things, let's just say you did something like this and you move some pictures around and you kind of do a layout like that or whatever it might be. As a teacher, I can save this for my student. So now I'm quickly kind of saving this version of their presentation that they can reference back on their own. So now back in their space, as the student space, I now have a second version of my wall that was created during class time and saved by my teacher in this case. And so I can go back and see not just what I uploaded, but what was kind of concluded throughout the conversation. So now if we go back here into my studio wall, we can see we have two different headings. Before I just had view and present, but now that I created an edit, I can see that edit that I just created. And of course, I can go back and present that edit and continue to refine it if I want to. Save it again, and that gets updated. So the goal is, of course, to interact with the group, interact directly with the student, give them something that they can save and see later back on their own time, and have, well, actually I didn't save that, so I should save it since I moved it. Then I can go back to the home page. So that's the basic flow. I'm going to go to the critiques again, and I'm going to critique a picture in front of you really quickly and show you how it looks. And then I'll pretty much have gone through most of the software already. It's a pretty quick and easy thing to learn. It's not complicated, it's pretty straightforward. So let's see here. Maybe I didn't put it into that space. Let's see where I am here. I'm going to critique this. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to critique it. Again, I'm the teacher and I'm choosing to critique. So I can go into an image. I can make the image smaller or bigger. And then I can use these little icons to draw marquees of and shapes. So like, let's say I thought that the picture was a little bit too purple or whatever it might be. I might draw a kind of generic box like that and say, make sure, I'm not a good typer, so sorry. Sure, you color correct. The image appears blue. Now imagine I wrote that. Now that's kind of an assumption. This is tricky because the way color works in these platforms is you're at the mercy of the browser you're on, and potentially Zoom could do things to your image too. So what we've done is we've allowed the images to be copied into the clipboard. So as a teacher, I can copy images to the clipboard, and I'm going to change my share really fast if I can. Let me just share my Photoshop. Let me open that up for a second. But I can copy the image into the clipboard. And what that does for me is it allows me to get access to the actual color information that is embedded in the file. So if somehow the browser handles the color incorrectly and is showing it in a way on screen that isn't accurate, I have now accessed that color information. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly again and get back into, here's Photoshop. You should probably be able to see it. And I'm just going to go new and paste. And there's the image. And so as a teacher, I might want to say, okay, let me just take a second here and try to figure out the color. And let me just say, okay, I think it looks blue. Maybe I'll do some tests here real quick, and I'll do some color neutralizing here. Try that and do something like that, or maybe it's here. And then I might come back to the student and I say, okay, I figured out a few things here. Maybe I'll add a quick gradient into the bottom here. So I'll do something like that. And then I'll introduce a gradient into it and say, okay, I think that's what I'm going to ask that person to do. And I can just kind of do things like that, figure a few things out. And then I have a little bit of a roadmap for myself. I can bounce back to my student now, and I'll say something like, neutralize here. To remove cast. So I could be as descriptive and specific and prescriptive as that as I want to be, or I could be more generic and kind of open-ended. This maybe I could say something like, try adding a gradient, darken the bottom here, corner to move the eye towards the center. So that's kind of what I would do as a critiquer, and I can change the size of my my marks also, and kind of just place them exactly where I want them. And then here I can do a summary, and whatever the summary might be, it might be just kind of an overall inclusive of about all the pictures, or just any one picture in particular. But again, that's what I would do. And after I'm done with my critiques, I'll update as I go, and then I'll complete my critique. And once that's completed, now my student receives that completed critique. So as a teacher, real quickly, guys, I can also do things like change my notification preferences, but I can also add a class. So as a teacher, I also get to make my own classes. So I can give a class a name. I can give it a class description, assign a start date and an end date. I can also set up the start times and the end times and the days in which we meet. And I can tell, I can offer 2 accesses. They either could have studio walls, critiques, or both as access points into a class that I create. I can also view my different classes. I'm going to leave this. I'm not going to actually create a class right now, but I can go into my own classes here. So here are a bunch of classes that I have. I can click on here and see the students that are in my classes. So you can see what kind of where they are. You get access to them. You can also, after you make a class, you can add a student to your class. So you go into the class that you've created, and then you can type in either an email address or a username if you know it, and you can invite them to become part of the class by automatically registering them. And when you send them an email, it says, "Welcome to Atget. Please finish your registration," and they just do a couple of password things to figure out, and then they're added into your class. And it's as simple as that. They are now part of your class. And we can also send them, let's go here. If they don't actually follow through with their registration, let's see if I can find one here. You can find, we have it said resend. So this person's been brought into the class, but they haven't yet finished the registration. So I could fire off the email to them again real quickly, and they can say, "Oops, I forgot to register," and kind of jump back in. So I can keep track of what everyone's up to, where they are. I can add students. I can delete students from classes. If I go to my class, I can then, again, I'm moving relatively quickly, I know, but when I have a class, I can, there's the class here. Let's see here. Then we have sessions. So if I create a 10-week class, I get 10 sessions. Each of those sessions I can name. So week 4 or 3 and 2 are all different themes. Inside those specific classes for those specific weeks, I can add assignments. So in this case, I've already created a couple of assignments, and I can always add an additional assignment for that week if I want to. And update assignment. So there's nothing in there, so it's mad at me, but that's okay. I'm just going to cancel that. And that's how it works. I have 10 sessions now because I created a 10-week class, and I can add sessions into there. So I could have more than 10 if I wanted to. I can delete sessions and have less than 10 if I want to. I have start dates, and when I make assignments, I also have dates for when the assignments are due. So it's all very clear, hopefully, for the student to see what's coming, where things should be. When they upload images, they have they're told you choose the class and the assignment that you're actually putting your work into, and it allows this kind of fast interaction. So real quickly, I just want to say this. What I think is interesting about this moment in what we're doing with online work, and also this conversation about really how education is moving and changing. I think one of the things that we're really concerned with in the design of this software was, how do you maintain a process of thinking, creativity, and production, and not be reliant on waiting for the 3-hour block of time where you meet as a class and only have feedback during those short periods of time. The beauty of this is it can be used in lots of different ways. This could be a supplement to an existing class. This could be the way a class is primarily run, through interaction in this asynchronous kind of way. It could be a complement to a class. It could be potentially something maybe a TA does while you teach one part of the class, and a TA kind of interacts with the students. Reminds me of my old biology days with my recitation classes, where I had TAs kind of working with us during the week, and then I have my main class with my professor. There's all kinds of uses for this that I think break the kind of the limitations of jamming in as much as you can, as fast as you can in that small block of time. And I think it really alleviates the stress a lot for a student too, because instead of relying on this kind of getting it all in and trying to soak in 10 minutes of 15 minutes of feedback, there's a chance for a conversation that interacts with you as you are bumping up against problems, as you are iterating your images, as you are working through them and you want some feedback. You can interact with somebody like us and get feedback and continue to work on your way, and not be limited to waiting for that, that one weekly class to come around. And that is basically how it looks in a nutshell here. I'm going to log out as a teacher. I'm going to log back in as a student. And real quickly, we'll see that critique I just did. So as a teacher, as a student now, go to my critiques, completed, go to my completed, and I can see the one that just came in, and that's this one. I can click on it, and then I can see what my teacher wrote, and I can potentially add a follow-up question if I want to, and get a response.
So, Ben, we're starting to get a few questions, but I don't want to stop you prematurely.
I think that basically kind of does address the workflow. So go ahead.
I have a question about whether you envision, you just said that, but whether you envision this primarily as an asynchronous tool. I was thinking when you were moving around the wall, that could be really useful as a synchronous tool. It actually, I was wondering, and that connects a little bit to Alex's first question of whether, I guess that whether it supports video. So when you move things around on the wall, do you record that, or is that something you do and then you take a snapshot of it, so to speak?
So this is also a good question, because this is something that's continuing to be iterated and growing. Video is something that will be implemented. Right now, we just have the still images, but yes, soon enough, there will be videos that you can look at also. The way I use this in a synchronous way is I treat the studio space like as if I were in class with my students, but I'm doing it, let's say, over Zoom. So I'm sharing my screen in Zoom, and the whole class is participating in the conversation, though I'm driving the wall. I'm moving the images around. So it becomes very much a live, in-person kind of conversation that can also function just like what I think a normal classroom feels like, in addition to being asynchronous if need be. Can the students
rearrange the wall?
They can rearrange their own. They can't rearrange each other's at this point. Okay. So of course a student can rearrange his or her own, but you can't. I can't grab my classmate's wall. I can comment on their individual images, but we don't have it so everybody can grab it as well. So we kind of the privilege of the host or the teacher. And we can have more than one particular host, if you will, kind of like in Zoom where you can have a few different hosts, but generally you have to be assigned that privilege to do that.
And Alex has one more question,
Sure.
and that is, can I write private notes to myself for grading and assessment? Are there hidden notes? I guess that's what you're saying.
Now there are no hidden notes. That is not something we've implemented. That's an interesting thought as a way of staying organized and just kind of keeping stuff for yourself to see. Yeah, I think that's an interesting thought, but no, we don't have that.
So the next question, Liz Allen says she loves the rearrange feature because we often want them to sequence their images. I agree that that's a really, really useful dimension. Kate wants to know the cost for students and or college.
So the plan is that it's a cost really based on the number of clients you have or students you have. So it can change based on how many people you want to service. Obviously, there's storage space that's really a part of the cost. And right now we are in early stages of it. So the cost is going to be really a reflection of cost of use, just for usage of it, and the costs of like server space and things like that. But we are growing this software. So at this stage, we don't have an official cost structure laid out that is anything more than covering the costs of server space and keeping the thing running. So at this iteration stage, that's what it is. It's not yet anything more than that in terms of price structure. But it will move into a finished, complete state as we continue to move it forward. But right now, it's totally, I'm sharing with you all, if anyone's interested in using it too, that's something we can do. We very quickly connect and see how we can kind of get this up if you want to use it for your students or for any way you can see fit. If you go to the main website too, there's a contact support. You can see up there where you can click on that and you can just connect to us that way, and we can connect directly back to you. You can also see on our What's New wall, you can see how deep and iterative this whole process has been. We have many thousands maybe of notes as we continue to constantly build it up and refine it. It's very stable at this point. It's really simple to use, and in my experience with my students, they pick it up pretty fast. It's not that complicated at all.
Yeah, that was going to be another question I have, but I'm going to read some of the other questions that are up here right now. Well, first, actually related to what you said, I mean, I think we talked earlier about the possibility of it being a kind of plug-in for Canvas at some point. Was that something you're looking into?
So we have looked into whether or not how hard that would be. It's not hard to do. It is something that we like to integrate into those programs like Canvas, where this can really become part of the student registration and everything kind of neatly packages. So it's all inside that infrastructure and that kind of environment, or whatever you call it, like I guess environment, your school's environment.
Oh, yeah, learning management system.
Yeah, learning management system, LMS. So right now we haven't done that yet, but we have looked into it, and it's something we're going to implement soon.
Okay, that would.
And are you doing? Do you have beta testers besides yourself and your colleagues? I mean, like would you want to have a few people from here do some beta testing over the break, maybe?
Yes, we would. We are part of my outreach to you all is that we are deeply invested in creating this thing, and it's already usable, very highly usable and efficient. As you may have kind of a glimpse of, I am using this constantly, and several other people are using it a lot. And the more people can get their hands on it and get access to it, the more we'd like to use it. That's why I'm sharing with this community, because I think this is the kind of community that can really understand it and run with it.
And it's a lot of the reason why I wanted Ben to be able to join us, is that Ben has asked me to be one of those beta testers, and I have been so negligent. So hopefully some of you guys will take up my place in that roster of beta testers.
Well, yeah, and I would say that, you know, we pay attention to the chat and we save the chat. So if you are interested in being a beta tester, just put your email and say that you're interested, and then we will forward all that information to Ben.
Beta and your email.
Yeah, beta and your email. So beta and your email, and then we'll send it to Ben, and he can sort out how to do that. And I think what's great here, Ben, is that you've got some really great people who have been doing this a long time. So I think having private notes is a great suggestion, and there might be some other things that our listeners are thinking of that might really help flesh the thing out.
To that point, Ben, I am going to pull back up to Alex's questions, because one of them didn't get asked, I don't think. Does it support spoken and recorded comments? Because you know how I feel about that. I want to record.
Yeah, so we've gotten some feedback about, and I learned a bit from the feedback from you guys too, about how students respond to the sound of the teacher's voice. So that was brought up in the past. That is something that we have every intention of getting up and running as soon as we can, as a way of kind of doing quick notes that are audio notes, as opposed to the necessity to type. Now, I will say this, part of this usage, I think, as an artist or as a teacher, is understanding how this steps into a process of creative thought and making. I didn't design this to be like a long form critique review space. It is about the flow of creative making and feedback. So when I type to a student, I am not trying to solve every one of their problems in this response. What I'm trying to do is move them to the next step. I'm trying to respond to what they're asking for and also nudge them in the right direction. I expect them to re-upload the next version of it. And sometimes, you know, really the longest critique I'm going to give them is usually the very first critique. And then from there, it's like, okay, great, now do this, try this. Okay, I like what you did, but maybe you overshot it. And it becomes this kind of conversation that is, interestingly, very trust building. It feels very intimate. I think the students respond very quickly to this idea that I'm invested in their work and watching them move through it. I don't spend hours, I spend seconds. Sometimes I think the average I was spending was 300 seconds per critique to start. And then from there, it would just get usually shorter and shorter as I kind of iterate with them throughout their process. So it does require, I think, a rethinking of the way we structure our classes and our class time. I think that's an exciting part of it. As a teacher too, there's a certain amount of this that I get to do on my time, and I can, we can structure classes however we want in a sense, and this can kind of open up a different way of thinking about how we actually create classes. It's interesting for me. It's new problem solving constantly. It allows me to work in the mornings or at nights or whenever I feel comfortable, and I don't have to perform in front of the group the same way. I can think sometimes slower and better. I'm not always on my toes in front of a group. And I like that feeling too, as in that position as a teacher, to not always be performing in front of the group and being able to kind of think things through, slow down, work at my own pace. And the key, of course, for all of us is to make sure that this kind of work is something we are properly compensated for. It doesn't just get added on to what we do already. This is kind of forward thinking to me, and how we can rethink the way we structure our time and how we get compensated and how we work with students beyond just the blocks of time of a class.
And
So
Ben, sorry, go ahead, Betsy.
I'm gonna ask Angela's question that's up near the top of the list. I don't know. Will that take us in a different direction, Anne? Do you know?
Actually, it will, but I think it's actually where I was going to head, which
Okay.
and maybe let me take a stab at this, because I think we talked about this briefly when we met with Ben, which is that this takes us back to the conversation we had with Marnie here at FotoFika, which is that rearranging how and what you're doing in your classroom, this potentially could be a groundbreaking tool for that, from the standpoint that we always have the technical issues that need to be addressed with image making. And being able to utilize class time for the conceptual development, for the everything else that needs to be there. This software would potentially open up that time frame, so that we're not going through all of the tiny details of how to fix an image before we get to a print, or before we get into, whatever, but that we start compartmentalizing out that time a little bit differently. But the question, Ben, which I do think is a relevant one, which is, because I know you have this experience with it already, is, have you tried this platform to explore more conceptually driven work?
Well, we have focused on the idea of still photography, but I can tell you for sure the conversation is about how this becomes a platform for feedback, whether it is at this stage more photographically driven, but any kind of way of interacting and exchanging information can be a potential for the use of this software. So I could imagine writing being part of this. I could imagine music being part of this. I could imagine even like taking snapshots of something you're working on and firing it off to your mentor or teacher, and getting feedback quickly that way. I imagine this as a tool more about creative process and solving difficult, tricky problems through a flow of kind of conversation and interaction with someone who's in the position to help guide you. So to answer non-specifically, yes, this is the start, I think, of a real kind of process of how we get better and better at solving problems, and really can, I think, can find itself in lots of different iterations and types of problem solving, really.
Connected to that is Deborah has a question of whether you use this exclusively. Is this the exclusive platform through which you're teaching your classes, or is it integrated with other platforms?
So I have it. I use this with Zoom basically, but I have some students I work with that are not at all in a class, that are just interacting with me through this. I have some students that are part of groups that we have these classes that we share our walls with, and we have conversations on a weekly basis. I have some students where I spend most of my time with them in this iteration of the asynchronous part, and then I'll meet with them once a week for about 20 minutes just to kind of touch base and kind of connect some dots and drive forward from there. So it's flexible in lots of ways. Some students prefer this. I have noticed that some of my most advanced artists who are looking for kind of that second brain to kind of bounce their work off of as they're making, who don't necessarily want to be or need to be in a group critique or just want to be at that moment, but still want to stay connected. And they'll come in and out. They'll work for a few months. They'll pop back in and spend some weeks with me, showing me work, and I'll keep giving them feedback. They'll work through that. They'll disappear again. They'll work a little bit. They'll come back in again. So it's really a kind of simple and easy way of being connected without also a kind of the feeling that you are answering to a whole group all the time. And so, yeah, I mean, really, I have some people who really just are interacting with me over this software more than anything.
Well, and I think that's what for me is so exciting about the software is that it doesn't have, it hasn't been built for a 4-year degree in any great specificity, that it has multiple channels of photo education that might be able to dovetail into its use. I think, however, probably I'm guessing part of the question that Deborah is asking is, do you personally have any experience yet with it being embedded in Canvas or Blackboard? Yeah, because I know I can answer for ICP, we don't have an LMS for our online courses.
No, we have not done that yet.
Okay.
But we do know that it can be integrated.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So Liz is asking a question about peer review and how does this work in terms of I mean, what she says is assigning peer review either randomly or by groups is a huge part of asynchronous classes. They're required for credit, and she needs a way to keep track and give credit to the students for their comments.
That's a good question. So what we don't have yet is a way of tabulating, let's say, everything that one student did. Like, we don't have yet integrated a way of quickly as a teacher saying, okay, let me see how many times Joe commented and hit a button and get that kind of metric. So that is something I think as in terms of what teachers can do to help them with their grading. I think that's a great idea. I think that would be a worthwhile, I think, investment to kind of pursue for us. But as of now, we only have the comments that are available for everyone to see. And but we don't have a way of kind of graphing it out and cataloging what they've done and keeping track just for those kinds of purposes of assessment. But I think that's an important idea.
I was going to just say, while you have the screen up, if anybody specifically has an interface question, I know this thing would be shifting, but if you'd bring that now so that we can bring the screen down and see your face.
Okay. Yeah.
Does anybody have anything related to the interface that they want to see him move around in?
I can always bounce back in if you want me.
And you can unmute yourself and ask a question if you want. Going
Okay,
once.
I'll bounce out of the interface.
All right, there we go.
Back in. I can always bounce back in. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So that you had 3 levels of tabs there.
Mm-hmm.
And can you explain what those 3 levels were?
Yeah.
I was typing and taking notes. So like, how does that work?
The way we have it set up is we have the main heading. So we have critiques and walls that we share. Okay. Then you have the classes you're in. And then you have, as a student, the various states in which your critiques in this case are at. Completed, they have questions, they're in progress, just to keep you in touch with the flow through the process of being looked at. When it comes to studio walls, you have your classes, and you can place your actual studio walls into specific classes when you actually create the studio wall, and you can see all the different studio walls you have. And then when you are in a shared space, you have your classes and then potentially the assignments within those classes. So you can see all of the uploads for your class. So you have your studio walls that are shared, the classes you're enrolled in, the assignments that they're in. You can see them all at once, or you can just go into the specific week to see yours and your classmates' uploads. So it can stay nice and neat and tidy that way. You can see everything if you want to, or you can see the specific week for the specific assignment of the shared walls. So that's how we have it, 3 tiers: the main space, the classes, and then the assignments when it comes to the walls. And then the critiques are more based on the critiques, this heading here, the class that it's in, and then the state in which that process has images in. whether or not they're just in progress, or been requested, or they're completed, and things like that. So you can kind of keep track of all your completed files in there. You can see, oh wait, there's a question that's still waiting to be answered. These are ones that have been finalized with questions that have been answered already, and these are the ones that I uploaded originally but I canceled out, and I still have those as a record.
Ben, someone is asking, Michael is asking if you'll show it from the teacher's perspective as well.
Sure. So as a teacher, I didn't mention this, but as a teacher, you can have your own studio walls too that you can share with your classes. So let's say I wanted to do a presentation. I can go into my studio wall, I can put a studio wall into a class, and then at any point I can share it, and then my classmates or my students can see it. So I can also have my own studio walls that don't get seen by anybody but me until I share them. But when it goes to critiques, I can see now all of the critiques that are, in this case, waiting to be responded to. And that's all of them, but I can also specify specific classes. So if I want to see what's going on for my class today, I go to this class, I can see if there's any unassigned critiques for this particular class. And that's how it basically works. There's just different classes with different outstanding critiques that are floating and waiting to go. And I can locate where they are in the tabs and address them. My studio walls, again, these are the ones I can create and I can share with any of my students at any time for demos. Like let's say I wanted to do a lecture. I can make my studio wall that way, and then I could share it and unshare it whenever I feel fit. And with any class I want for that matter. And then these are the studio walls that I am looking at with my whole class. So in this case, this is the one I made for us, Atget demo class. There are 3 different assignments, and in theory, there would be just one, not just one person, but maybe 10 people for this assignment. And I can look at each of those 10 assignments separately. And for that week's assignment, that week's assignment, or that week's assignment. And that's how we keep it organized.
The next question we have comes in from Be Proud. She wants to know how big you can view images if you want to look for fine details, sharpness, etc.
Okay, so the size of the file that you upload determines really the size of the file in terms of the ability to zoom in on it. So I recommend to students that they put in 3,000 pixels across as the long dimension. And that gives you this, right now we have kind of a quick short hand zoom in. So it would depend on really how large of a file you want the students to upload for you. And that will affect the kind of zoom in it does. So I have found that 3,000 pixels across is a comfortable amount of file size. And we support JPEGs. We support the new kind of layered JPEG format and PNGs and different formats that they can upload up into here. But it's really up to you, and it also affects upload time. So one of the things that happens in these environments is like students can get bogged down by upload times and all that stuff. So I think the sweet spot is that 3,000 pixel spot, but it can be more than that or less. But students start to get annoyed when it takes a long time to upload their images, and this keeps it at a nice, I think, clip.
And your costs are connected to your server space. So, you know, that 3 terabyte, 4,000 DPI image will cost a lot over time.
Now, personally, because we're not supporting layers, so I will have oftentimes a Google Classroom in the background that if a student needs to communicate with me through a layered file, I can just upload it there. But we don't support layers because this was not designed. What we didn't want this to be was a space where you really do the work for anybody. It's designed to be fast. It's about conversation. It's akin to this thing that happens, you know, as a teacher, I can't tell you, and you all experience this 1,000 times, where a student comes up to you, asks you questions, and in the short period of time, you can supply them with information that can be deeply effective and consequential for their next steps. So I've had students chase me down the hall. I've chased teachers down the hall. I remember as an undergrad waiting for a teacher to walk to the front door so I could ask her a bunch of questions while she walked to the copy machine, Martha Rosser, when I was at Rutgers. That was my experience. But the idea is that you get access to your teachers in a way that allows you to have that feedback without the burden of it all, and without the need of organizing. You know, we all know how much a half an hour Zoom meeting takes more than a half an hour. And if a student wants to send you some pictures, you have to download them, put them into Photoshop, look at them, upload them again, open up your email, send a bunch of comments. All of that little simple stuff just explodes in time consumption. So I want to eliminate that. I want to make the feedback real. I want to make the feedback efficient. I want to make the conversation more, I think, productive, but also easier, faster, and less headaches. That was the goal. Remember, this is also designed as an artist and a faculty and a teacher. Someone who is actually thinking about how do I help my students in a way that is also easier on me.
So a lot of the questions and a lot of the conversation right now, I think, has centered around these ideas of the moments of exchange and how you exchange and how ideas are stored, you know, so whether it's speaking or writing, there's been several comments about typing and recording. And I think one thing, just to zoom back a little, is to think about, I think, different people teach in different ways. And I think that for some of us, the immediate, you know, recorded is better. For some of us, typing is better. For some, being able to comment on having a section for the technical is very, very helpful. And I think that what's really useful for me in listening to this is thinking about different ways to get feedback back to the students, because I think that one thing we're all discovering is there's just not one simple solution. There's not one simple replacement for the way most of us were trained in terms of sitting in the classroom, you know, 12 people looking at a wall. And so anyway, I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, is what kind of information gets delivered when and how, and the difference between synchronous or asynchronous. And you're talking a lot, Ben, about time, right? And how people parse out their time. Anyway, that's just an observation more than anything else, but about ways to think about this platform and how it can work in terms of what information needs to get conveyed.
I really believe, and as an artist and as a teacher, I want this to be as efficient as those conversations I have with a student who walks up to me and shows me a few pictures. And I can quickly give them that feedback that when they leave and they can do their work. To me, that's a really kind of a wonderful part of what teachers and students do. They can react quickly, that can help you. I don't need to set up an appointment to have that conversation. It happens organically sometimes when you're walking down the halls. It doesn't happen online very organically, but it can. And I think it can happen more organically this way, where there isn't this requirement like, oh, I need to schedule you for Thursday at 3 o'clock in order to talk to you. I don't need that with Atget software. It can let the conversation flow without that. Now, a couple things I want to say really quickly. We estimate that probably it's going to be less than $10 a month per student. So if you wanted to think about that as a budgeting thing down the road, that's kind of the way we see this being a software and the cost of it. And I also want to make it clear to everybody that they understand that comments are made by teachers on the wall and classmates to each other too. That's something it's a conversation on the studio wall space.
Well, we're really close to 5 o'clock, but Anne's got I was going to say one thing, which was before. One thing I love about what you're doing is that, you know, in terms of software production and development, it's usually not by artists and not by teachers. It's usually by somebody else who doesn't know what our needs are. So I really, really appreciate the kind of effort and attention that you're putting into making something that's usable for you. And, you know, it sounds like it's quite appealing for a number of us in terms of thinking about our time, thinking about ease of access, thinking about, I mean, I love the idea of being able to copy and paste, you know, copy something and creating a document and being able to see it. So I want to thank you for making this investment into us. You know, Anne, you want to say goodbye and ask some questions?
I was gonna remind us that it's 5 o'clock. It's a beautiful way to end things. We did have one question that came in privately to me, which I think is a really good and relevant question, which is about the scalability of the software on different devices. Since I know that we won't have time to get into that, and please, before you take off, if you've got any last questions, make sure they're in the chat. We are going to send this to Ben. Obviously, wonderful feedback for you and for us, such an incredible opportunity to see something that could, quite frankly, be a major tool in in photo education. So thank you again, Ben. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, everyone. Again, go to the website if you want to, Atget Studio, to contact us. Or my name is, Ben Gest. So guestben at Gmail, as simple as that, GESTBEN at Gmail. Feel free if you want to directly contact me. It's easy enough that way too.
Great. Thanks, everybody. And we'll stick
We're
around
back
for a
in
little
2
bit.
weeks. We'll be back in 2
We'll
weeks.
be back in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
We're having my colleague, Jonathan Garcia Molina, and we're going to continue our conversation about critique. So you'll get a notice about that. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you. I appreciate it very much.